Welcome back to 5 Acres Honey Farm. I'm Tara Lynn. We're gonna go and take a look at our new mobile chicken coop, aka a chicken tractor. We designed this and built it specifically for raising meat birds, and this is our first time raising some meat chickens. And my husband has a little machine shop, so he did all of the fabrication and welding for it. So we saved on some costs there, but all the materials cost less than $300. And I'll put a breakdown in the description of the materials used. And some of the chicken wire, very minimal amount we had already, but I did buy a new roll of 2-foot chicken wire, and so I'll have everything broken down in the description. But I'll show you a little bit about why we designed it the way we did and how it's been performing, because we've been using it for a month now. And these meat birds are Murray McMurray big red broilers, so they take 3 months to mature. So we had the chicks in a brooder inside for 3 months. I'm sorry, not for 3 months, for 1 month. They've been outside for 1 month, so that means we have them for 1 more month. So it's a fairly brief investment of time for raising them. So let's take a little walk over there and we'll take a look at it. And then I'll also kind of do a little time machine, and we'll take a look at how it started and how Mike had welded everything together. So I'll give you a little profile view of the chicken tractor, and both of the sides on the top open. They have a door on one side, and we'll take a closer look at it in a second. And I'm just kind of giving you a peek at, they've got this new space I just moved them to, so they'll be in here for about a week. I just move them every day. And then over here, they've already been through all this space over the past month. I'll demo one side of the coop for now because they're identical, so you'll get the idea. And I'm using these bungee cords temporarily because they're actually meant to hold the tarp down, but I'm using them to help keep predators from opening it, even though it's fairly heavy. Not too heavy, but I think heavy enough for predators. But both sides open this way for easy cleaning. It actually has a fairly large radius if you needed to go in there and grab anybody. So that's kind of the nice thing. You also see there's wheels on the one side. So I should say that it's not identical because it's not on the other. So I've got 2 tarps on top for now because I have a larger tarp that's not waterproof. It has some holes in it. And then I bought a new smaller tarp that is waterproof, and I'm using that specifically on the side where their food is kept. So that way their food doesn't get wet. We've had a few days with no rain, so I actually had the tarps pulled back, but we're supposed to get some rain this afternoon, so I'm just putting them back down so you get to see that process. So I'm actually pretty glad we didn't put a fixed roof on top because I like the ability to, depending on where they're going to be located, like where the sun is coming from, it's nice to be able to pull the tarps back in a way to give them sunlight when they want to have it. So I kind of like that aspect of the design. One thing that's been challenging is their water. The ground is fairly unlevel in different places, and they are loving to sit on top and poop in it. So we haven't reinforced the top to be able to support a heavy waterer. So that's one thing we would do if we were going to have them longer. I'm just dealing with it right now. The feeder hangs in there great. It's perfect size, and that was kind of by accident. I think we should have measured the feeders before designing it. Coming to check on the chickens, and I noticed some things moving in the pond, and I thought it was a snake or something, but it's actually some frogs having some springtime love. But one thing that has been surprising having meat birds is even given the opportunity to roam all day, they just sit inside. It's really peculiar to see. They've got all the space to hang out, but they just stay in there. Before we look back at how it was made, here's a shot without the tarps on it. This is the early stages of the future coop.
Could it be any messier in here?
Of course. It's normal. To prevent rust, Mike's painting the whole thing black.
And it's
So
also
that's set up so that we can hook it up to
It's,
lawn tractor.
Yep, and I'll make a little handle that goes in the hole and you can pick it up with 2 hands and move it around and I'll stay on it.
With 2 hands, not 3.
Yeah.
And then it wheels.
I'll do the chicken wire now, but essentially will be done. And this is just going to be a plywood door over here.
Cool. I'll leave you with 3 things that we would do differently with this coop design. When Mike was building it, he really likes to just execute and not check in kind of thing. So he's super productive, but it was designed so that you have to really lift it a few feet off the ground for the wheels to catch to move it. So it's very difficult to move while the chickens are in it. That's not ideal. I actually find it a lot easier anyway. Like, I'm trying to imagine if I didn't have to lift it so much. Having that bar, there's actually a bar in the center that runs to give it support. I feel like when I've moved it with them in it, it's been really challenging because I'm getting their feet stuck, and I'm like, I also, with the tarp on top, I can't really see as much. So even with pulling the tarp back, the plywood door is solid, so I can't keep an eye on where their feet are so that I can carefully move it without hurting them. So what I've been doing to mitigate that, in case you have a similar design and you're trying to get around it, is I take their feet away either around lunchtime if they're gonna have like afternoon free ranging, or I take it away first thing in the morning if they're gonna be out all day. And that way, when I'm ready to move the coop, I just set up their feed a few feet in front of the coop, and they're busy having their snacks. So it's so easy to move it. It's not super heavy. I find it very light. I find it very easy to move. It's something I can completely manage on my own. That's what's really important to me, is to be able to move it on my own. So the second thing we could do differently, but I don't really need to. And I think probably because of the way that the wheels are fixed, and like that, what I just mentioned about the angle having to pull them up, is like Mike had suggested getting a winch set up so that whenever we would need to move it, we could just crank, the winch and it'll pull it. So I wouldn't have to drag anything. But honestly, it's so light and simple to move. I feel like that's just overkill. And especially since we're not planning on perpetually raising meat birds. Like, if we were doing this constantly and I had like a long stretch of pasture I'd be pulling them through, that would make sense. But since we're kind of doing this wagon wheel rotation with our house as the center, it would be having to move the winch every time. So I really wouldn't do that. But if I was going to have them like in the back where we have a much straighter area that I could rotate them through, and we were going to be doing it more often, we could do that differently. So I did mention that their water situation is really challenging. I was looking at different waters at the feed store, and a lot of them are very large. So it would be very annoying to move every day. And the idea with having the mobile coop is you don't want anything too heavy. So I like the size that we have. It's just more of keeping it clean, because they like to jump on top of it. And I haven't seen any waters that are that size that are able to be hung. Like, the handle is just flush. So Mike is actually planning on bending that metal to make it more of like a triangle shape, so that we could put a chain in an S-hook and have the water hang in there. But in order to do that, we need to add a reinforcement across the top of that side there. And then just figuring out like the correct spacing between a hanging water and their hanging feeder, so that I can access them easily when I'm letting them out, and then when I'm moving the tractor later on in the day. So the third thing that we could potentially do differently, and time will just tell, is that right now we've got 13 meat birds out there, and my intent was to have 20 to 24. And if you saw my earlier video about ordering chicks in the mail, we had a lot of fatalities when they arrived. And I did not want to reach back out to the hatchery because I need to have these birds mature and processed by a certain time, because we have a lot of other plans coming up. Seeing how this tractor is performing, there's the dishwasher and Cleo, seeing how this tractor is performing with 13 birds in it makes me really scared to see it with double the amount of birds in it. We did go away for one weekend, so they were stationary for 4 days. and I was really nervous about that, and it was pretty gross. So I'm not really happy about that part of it. Thinking of like what would be the best setup for more birds, like would we need another tractor to have more birds, or would there be a way we could, I don't really want to modify this, or do we just cap the amount of birds we would raise at like 15 to 20? Like even 20 I think would be stretching it. I think they would be okay, but it would be a little cramped. So those are the things that I would change. And this is our third coop. So we have a fixed chicken coop for our layers, and we have a fixed quail coop. I have a tour and a little like how it was built for the quail coop, if you're curious about that. So I'll link that below also. But otherwise, right now we have no plans to make any other tractors, but if we do, we'll incorporate some of the things that I've talked about here. And then if you have any suggestions for future design or for some modifications, please let me know in the comments.